how to maintain motivation over long periods of time. What would be the best set of protocols to normalize those extremes into a more stable and consistent state? It's a question that I hear a lot, and I think that many people are interested in knowing how motivated they ought to feel. And I think a lot of people also feel a lot less motivated than they would like. There were 3 tools. Okay, so this is a really powerful zero-cost tool for re-upping or replenishing that dopamine reserve. Now here the question was specifically about how to not go from these extremes of days or weeks of high motivation to days or weeks of low motivation. I want to remind everybody what the basis of motivation is. A central theme of the neuroscience of motivation is that the neuromodulator dopamine is involved. It is strongly related to the motivation pathways. So if dopamine levels are too low, people simply will not put in the effort to obtain or reach a goal. If dopamine levels are adequately high, they will put in that effort. What we want and is how to keep dopamine levels in a range that allow us to lean into effort, but that we don't expend our ability to stay motivated. The first step in learning to attach dopamine to the effort process, which is the key operation in order to succeed, is to be very careful about how much you focus on the end goal. Keeping the goal in mind is important for like a proper orientation. You have to know the ultimate destination. But if at any point we were to evaluate our progress relative to that end goal, or if we don't know what the end goal is, there's a huge gap there. Right. And it can feel overwhelming.
And depressing, and I'm not good enough.
That's right.
I should just give up. What am I doing this for?
That's right.
And those thoughts will affect us.
And they're very realistic. Positive self-talk, oftentimes, unless you do it correctly, you're badly wrong. You know, lying to yourself won't work. Saying I'm a winner when you haven't
lost
or you haven't won yet is great, but that's not the most effective use of these systems. So I think the key thing is to attach that sense of reward to the effort process, little by little, and by rewarding each thing, and learning to push away the things that are trying to make you reflexive is so important. And then there are really 3 ways that you can replenish that reservoir. How do you do that? Well, first of all, quality sleep. So when I say quality, I mean where you're getting enough slow wave sleep and rapid eye movement sleep. So for some people, 6 hours, for some people, 8 hours. Some people might even need a little bit more or a little bit less. So you cannot ignore sleep. The second science-supported tool that's really been shown to replenish dopamine, in particular, dopamine within the pathways that regulate motivation, is a practice called non-sleep deep rest, sometimes called yoga nidra, although yoga nidra is a little bit different. Do a yoga nidra practice. Again, this doesn't involve any movement, but it involves people, potentially you, doing anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes, although there are now data showing that as short as 10 minutes of a non-sleep deep rest, aka yoga nidra protocol, leads to really dramatic increases in striatal dopamine reserves. So it essentially is replenishing the dopamine reserve pool. This is why I'm such a fan of using NSDR, aka yoga nidra, at least once a day, and especially under times when you're engaging in a lot of high output. And when I say especially at times when you're engaging in a lot of high output, this is a mistake many people make. They push. They're in pursuit of a goal. Then they hit that point where they're exhausted. Then they start doing all the dopamine reserve pool replenishing tools, such as yoga nidra or NSDR. The real key is to always tap off that or refill that reservoir once a day before it's completely depleted. Okay, so this is something to do every day, especially when you're not feeling depleted. And I said there were 3 tools, and the third tool that really can allow you to keep the dopamine, aka motivation circuitry, tuned up properly is to really start paying attention to peaks in dopamine and be very careful about layering in too many things that can stimulate the dopamine system. There are many things out there nowadays that will deplete the dopamine system. For instance, and by the way, none of what I'm about to list is necessarily bad. I actually use some of these things. For instance, caffeine will increase dopamine receptors that will allow whatever dopamine is available to be more potent. Okay, so caffeine's great for some people, less good for people with anxiety. Don't drink it too late in the day because it'll interfere with your sleep, and so on and so forth. But many people will combine caffeine with music that they particularly like. Music's great. Music can stimulate dopamine release. We know this. It can enhance motivation, especially if it's the kind of music that really puts you in the groove for the particular type of work you're going to do. But what will happen is people will start consuming caffeine at higher and higher levels, and they'll start layering it in or stacking very potent music, potent for them. And pretty soon what's happening is they're getting these big waves in that dopamine wave pool, big peaks. And within a few days, or maybe even within a few hours, they're depleted and they're at that low. What happens is after those big peaks in dopamine, the reservoir, the baseline in dopamine drops below its initial level. So it's as if the reservoir got deeper and it's emptier, and it takes much, much longer to fill. Okay, so to be quite specific, what I'm recommending is get your sleep right, have a practice that is research supported to replenish dopamine, and incorporate that practice any time of day. And as a third point, please be wary of, or at least aware of, these peaks in dopamine and the fact that layering in a lot of things that stimulate dopamine. Okay, so rather than give you a specific schedule of, do 7 days of this and 4 days of this, what I encourage you to do is for at least 5 days a week, maybe give yourself some time off on the weekends, maybe not, but if for at least 5 days a week, get into a consistent routine. I assure you that you will find yourself in a more regular groove of focus and attention and alertness and motivation when you need to, and provided you're doing all the things I described, and hopefully paying attention to other things like nutrition and social connection too, of course, you'll find a much more even pattern of motivation over time.